Now I'm getting it.
Okay, it's, the red light is on.
Yeah, the red light is on, yeah.
Hi,
Sure.
is this Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Hi. This is the message, you know, this is what we believe that the New York State Department of Health should be telling the public. And I talked to the environmental person with New York State Department of Health, the Central New York office, down in Syracuse at 217 Salina Street. I talked to him about a week ago, and he said that he was concerned about the POPs because, see, they have Superfund sites that they deal with down there. And so, you know, we just feel like that we must talk about this. You know, I've sent emails, I've left, you know, phone messages, and we haven't talked about it. And I would just like to make an appointment to speak with you substantively about the scientific literature that describes the POPs cancer hazard. You know, it's a very important matter of public health. And see, we don't believe that it's necessary for only to talk about what the Central Office of New York State Department of Health wants to talk about. You know, we're here, we live the life we live here, and you know, we're not in Albany. And we feel that there's a POPs problem here because of being downwind and downstream from the Great Lakes Basin. You know, there's a huge amount of POPs sitting out there in the Great Lakes and the off-gas, and they're part of our world. We breathe a little bit of them every day. And people should know that they should not be putting unnecessary quantities of animal fat on the table for their kids. You know, it's just, and for the dogs and cats. The dogs and cats, so many of them get cancer. And they have, I was reading the label on the pet food. It's over 10% POPs. I mean, over 10, not, it's over 10% animal fat. That's absurd. Why would they want to put 10%? They see a minimum of 11% animal fat in the pet food, the ones I was looking at. That's crazy. The wild cats, you know, they used to eat mice that would probably have a minuscule amount of fat in them. That was, you know, they didn't go around eating very, very fat type stuff. They couldn't possibly have caught anything that was big enough to have a lot of fat in it. And so we're basically just disposing of waste animal fat, feeding it to cats and dogs. They get cancer. And we feel like that's very wrong. And so we're just hoping that by talking with people who get attention and that are just willing to talk about the science, you know, that we could just get somewhere with, you know, bringing some changes. It's very important. I've looked at this for years. I started looking at POPs research papers way back in, I didn't look at research papers in the 80s when the county was considering incineration. I just looked at reports. But the individual research papers, I started looking at them in the 90s. And so it's like the 90s, the 2000s, and now we're in the 2010s. And so I know a huge amount of this POPs, exposure, cancer risk, scientific literature. You know, I can quote research articles, names of authors, names of titles, you know, the findings, the abstract type information. It's all there. The science is well established, and the public should be given, you know, these warnings. You know, these are our health hazard warnings about the POPs for the public, and we put them up. I put them up, and there are so few bulletin boards. We put them up on the bulletin boards that are available, but it's such a tiny part of. We can't educate hardly anybody that way. I was at the Augsburg Free Academy. They had a karaoke contest yesterday, and I was there to just, you know, see the good vibe of the music and stuff. And then I had this threefold display that had both of these posters on the threefold display, and it just said X out animal fat in the middle, and then, you know, one of these, like, you know, on each side, just kind of like this, you know. And I was holding it there, and this girl came along. She said she didn't want her dog to get cancer, and we just talked about it. And I told her what I feed my dog, and then this young man came along. His wife was performing, did a great job performing. They're just bright, vibrant young people, you know, and they were concerned, you know. They're young people. They have their whole life to live. They're probably going to have little kids pretty soon. They don't want to just get the cancer that you could possibly get just because of what's out there. They want to, you know, avoid it as much as possible. And so we're just hoping that maybe somebody at the New York State Department of Health would, you know, take part in educating, because you guys are so much more powerful than us. And I'll be totally straightforward with you. We oftentimes hear that we, you know, they say the Potsdam School District in particular, even though, see Lou is a member of our group, and he came to the board meetings with me. We went to at least 2 board meetings and made presentations. I talked to the superintendent even before he was the school board, you know, I mean the school superintendent, the top governance person of the school. I talked to him, this Mr. Brady, way back when he was the supervisor in the town of Potsdam, about the dioxins from the open burning, and now about the POPs, the other POPs that people have become concerned about, these brominated flame retardants. And yet they still, his message to our group was, we prefer to work with the agencies, which means you guys. And so if you guys, if the New York State Department of Health and the County Public Health Department were educating on POPs, they would listen. But they won't even give us a shot at it. They won't even let us into the school to talk to the kids about POPs. But they would let, you know, the agencies, being the state and county agencies, health agencies in to talk about these chemicals that cause cancer, and that's part of the story. You know what I mean? It's part of the story.
Don, like I told you before, we don't handle that here. It's Albany that does it. I think you know the people there. I think his name is Kevin Gleason. Have you spoken to him?
I've not had the opportunity to speak with him except maybe very rarely. The main person I tried to talk to, Dr. Thomas Johnson, and he said to me, this is the truth. Dr. Thomas Johnson, he's in environmental assessment. He was the perfect person to talk to. Because see, what I did was I foiled the information that had come before New York State Department of Health scientists on the subject of POPs and cancer. I foiled that, and this Dr. Johnson's name was high amongst those that had been reading this stuff and looking at it. So I requested the opportunity to talk to Dr. Johnson, and he said to me, my supervisors have told me to refuse to talk to you. So that's what I'm saying. You know, that's what I'm saying. This is not. In 2003, two former members of Cancer Action, I don't think he wasn't on a conference call. He's Fred and Pat Biggs and I, and maybe their son, Tristan. We were on a conference call with Nancy Kim, who was the former one of the top people with environmental assessment. We had a conversation with her, a long conversation. It was a good dialogue. It lasted probably, an hour. It was decent. But that was 2003, and she said at that meeting, send me what you propose to have us state to the public about POPs. It was potentially going to go into this brochure, reducing environmental exposure, the 7 best kid-friendly practices. And then she didn't respond when I sent her the text. What I was proposing, like a couple sentences about POPs and food supply contamination and the cancer risk. I didn't get a response. So I sent her again, and I kept calling and emailing. And eventually, I did get a response, I think. But see, here we are, 2011, so that's 8 years later, and there's been nothing done. Nothing in any brochures, nothing on POPs, except this.